I still remember that damn invitation like it was yesterday. Cream envelope. Cursive letters that looked like they were written by a saint with too much free time. You are cordially invited to the wedding of Emily Grace Carter and David Matthew Klein. I got on a Tuesday. The kind of Tuesday where the world feels gray even though it's sunny out. I stood there in my apartment, holding that thing like it was radioactive. 2 years. 2 years since I left her apartment without saying a word that could actually explain something. 2 years of silence, work, beer, and avoidance. And suddenly, boom, her wedding. I don't know what kind of man decides to show up at his ex's wedding. But apparently, I'm that kind of man. It wasn't about her. Not anymore. That's what I told myself at least. It was about the truth. Because if you run long enough from what you owe someone, it doesn't disappear, it just waits. And I was tired of running. The drive to Ohio took me 9 hours. I stopped twice, once for gas, once for nerves. I stared at myself in the mirror of some dusty diner restroom halfway through Pennsylvania, trying to look like a man who had his life together. Spoiler, it didn't. The guy washing his hands next to me said, "Big day." I said, "You could say that." He laughed. "You look like someone heading to a funeral." Close enough. He gave me this look like he wasn't sure if I was joking or crying inside. Then he just shrugged and left. I stood there another minute, leaned on the sink, and said to my reflection, "Don't screw this up again." Emily and I met 6 years before that. She worked at a small publishing house downtown, and I was one of those mid-level guys in an insurance office who wears shirts with faint coffee, stains no one mentions. We met at a friend's barbecue. She laughed at a dumb joke I made about the overcooked burgers, and that was it. There was nothing dramatic about how it started. No cinematic rain, no destiny. Just two normal people who liked each other and thought that was enough. For a while it was. We lived together for 2 years. We had routines, Sunday pancakes, Thursday laundry, Jeopardy at 7. Ordinary stuff that quietly becomes the fabric of your life. And then one morning, I woke up, looked at her sleeping next to me, and felt like I didn't belong there. Not because of her. She was perfect in all the ways that matter. It was me. I felt off. Broken. I can't explain it better than that. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't some movie scene meltdown. Just this quiet certainty that if I stayed, I'd ruin her. So I left. No screaming, no notes, no closure. I packed a bag while she was at work, left the key on the counter, and drove off like a coward. 2 years later, I was standing in front of the church doors she was about to walk out of as someone else's wife. You'd think that kind of thing hits like a punch. It didn't. It was quieter than that. Like the way rain starts. You don't even notice until you're already soaked. Everyone looked happy, which somehow made it worse. Her friends, her family, her groom, all of them glowing with the kind of optimism that people like me don't get invited to anymore. I stood there pretending to check my phone, like maybe I was waiting for someone. The truth was, I didn't know if I even had the right to be there. And yet, I couldn't leave. The ceremony itself was beautiful, I guess. Simple. Some church downtown, white roses, a string quartet doing their best to sound elegant while the air conditioner made worn noises in the background. When she walked down the aisle, I didn't breathe. I just stared. Same eyes, same calm smile, same way she tucks a strand of hair behind her ear when she's nervous. But she looked lighter, happier, and that hurt more than anything. I took a seat in the back. Nobody noticed me, except maybe your cousin Mark, who gave me that look of, "What the hell are you doing here?" But I ignored it. During the vows, I didn't listen. I was somewhere else. In the kitchen of our old apartment, the one with the leaky faucet. I could almost hear her laughing about how I always burned the first pancake. And then, "You may kiss the bride." Everyone stood, clapped, cheered. I clapped too, because that's what you do when you're trying to blend in with a world that moved on without you. At the reception, things got louder. You know the kind of noise where everyone's talking, but it just turns into one big blur of sound? That's what it was. People laughed, glasses clinked, some uncle told a joke too loudly. I stood near the bar, nursing a beer I didn't even want, watching her dance with her new husband. He looked like a good guy. The kind of guy who mows his lawn on Sundays and actually folds his laundry right after the dryer. I hated that he seemed decent, because decent meant she'd be fine, and fine meant I was officially unnecessary. At one point, this woman next to me, older, maybe her aunt, leaned over and said, "You know the bride?" "Yeah," I said. "Used to." "Oh." She smiled politely, like she didn't catch the weight in that. "Isn't she glowing?" "Yeah," I said. "She is." She turned back to her group, leaving me alone with the kind of silence that even music can't drown. I thought about leaving then, just slipping out, driving home, pretending the whole thing was closure enough. But something in me said, not yet, because I hadn't said it, the thing that had been sitting in my chest for 2 years. So I waited. Around 8, after the toasts, when people started loosening their ties and the champagne had done its job, I saw her step outside the reception hall for a minute. Alone. I didn't plan it. I just followed. She was standing near the edge of the patio, looking out at the parking lot lights. When she turned and saw me, she didn't look shocked, just curious. "Hey," she said. "Hey." For a second, neither of us said anything. You could hear the muffled sound of the band inside, playing Can't Help Falling in Love. "I didn't think you'd come," she said finally. "Yeah," I said. "Neither did I." She smiled. Not the kind that means happiness. The kind that means we've both grown up a bit too much. "So," she said, "what are you doing here?" And that was it. The question. The one I'd been rehearsing answers to for months. I took a breath. I didn't come to mess anything up. I swear. There's something I never told you. Something I should have said before I left. She looked at me, waiting. "I didn't leave because of you," I said. "And not because there was someone else. There wasn't. I left because I was broken. I didn't know how to be with someone without eventually screwing it all up. And you deserved better than that." Her face didn't change much. Just this softness in her eyes. "I thought if I stayed," I went on, "I'd drag you into whatever mess was going on in my head. So I ran. Like a coward." "You weren't a coward," she said quietly. I said. "I am. But I couldn't go another day without telling you the truth." She nodded slowly, took a breath, and said, "I figured that out a long time ago." I didn't know what to say. She added, "For a while I was angry, then sad, then nothing. And then one morning I woke up, and it just made sense. You weren't ready to stay. That's all." "Yeah," I said. "That's all." She smiled. "Well, I'm glad you're okay." "Yeah, you too." And that was it. No tears, no dramatic music, no cinematic goodbye. Just two people who used to love each other, standing under bad patio lighting, finally telling the truth. I left right after. Didn't even finish my beer. As I walked to my car, I could still hear the music from the hall. People laughing, clapping, dancing. It didn't hurt. Not like before. It felt like finally exhaling after holding your breath too long. People always say closure comes from time. That's a lie. Closure comes when you stop lying to yourself, to others, to the version of you that keeps pretending everything's fine. I drove home that night with the windows down. It was cold, but it felt right. Somewhere between the miles, I realized something. Love doesn't always need to end with someone walking away. Sometimes it ends when someone finally tells the truth. That should have been the end of it. But life, being life, decided to throw in one last scene. A few months later, I got a postcard in the mail. No return address. Just a beach photo and 4 words. "Thank you for coming." I laughed. Out loud. In my empty kitchen. Because yeah, thank you for coming. Thank you for finally showing up. Now, when people ask me if I believe in fate, I tell them no. But I believe in timing. I believe in moments. Like the moment when you realize you don't love someone the way you used to, but you still care enough to wish them peace. Or the moment you understand that forgiveness isn't something they give you. It's something you earn by being honest. And that night, in that parking lot, with the sound of her wedding in the background, I finally earned mine. But let me back up a bit, because I skipped the part that actually led to that moment, the 2 years in between. People think when you walk out of someone's life, you move on fast. Like flipping a switch. Truth is, it's more like drowning in slow motion. The first few weeks after I left were brutal. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach turned. I expected her to call, to ask why. But she didn't. She had self-respect. I moved into a studio apartment above a laundromat. The smell of detergent became my new roommate. My life shrunk down to work, microwave dinners, and watching sports I didn't care about. Friends tried to help. Mike, my coworker, said, "Man, you just need to get back out there. Meet someone new." I said, Yeah, because what every emotionally wrecked guy needs is a rebound. He laughed. Suit yourself. But you look like hell. Appreciate that. I went on a couple of dates. They went about as well as you'd expect when you're emotionally constipated. One girl asked, "So what are you looking for?" I said, "I don't know. A reason to stop checking my phone at night, I guess." She smiled politely and never texted back. Fair enough. Work didn't help much. Same gray cubicle, same motivational posters, same coffee that tastes like burnt hope. My boss, Rick, kept giving me those pep talks. "You gotta set goals, Jake. Visualize success." I said, "Rick, my biggest goal right now is surviving Monday." He didn't laugh. Rick never laughs. But the thing about guilt is it doesn't go away, it just changes shape. At first, it's loud, keeps you up at night, replays old conversations. Then it gets quieter, sneakier, shows up in small moments, when you pass a bakery she used to love, or when a song from that summer sneaks onto the radio. By the end of the first year, I stopped feeling sad and started feeling unfinished. Like there was a sentence I'd left hanging midway, and I couldn't move on until I finished it. That's when the wedding invitation came. Now, anyone with sense would have tossed in the trash. Maybe even said something noble like, "I wish her well," and gone on with their life. But no, I stared at that card for 3 days straight. It sat on my coffee table like a dare. Mike saw it one evening when he dropped by. "Dude," he said, "tell me you're not actually thinking of going." "I might." He blinked. "You might? You're going to show up at your ex's wedding? That's either brave or stupid. Maybe both." He shook his head. "What are you hoping for, man? Some Hollywood redemption arc?" "No," I said. "Just the truth." He stared at me for a bit, then sighed. "You know what? Whatever happens, at least it'll make a hell of a story." He wasn't wrong. So yeah, that's how I ended up sitting in my car outside the reception hall 2 years later, listening to my own heartbeat louder than the music inside. And when I finally told her the truth, and she said she already knew, something in me unclenched. Because that's the part no one tells you. Sometimes the apology you've been holding on to doesn't change anything for them. It changes everything for you. When I got home that night, I sat on my couch, turned on the TV, and didn't even watch it. I just let it play in the background. It was quiet, peaceful even. I slept better than I had in years. And for the first time, I didn't dream about her. A few months later, I went back to that same diner from the drive to Ohio. The same one with the guy who thought I was going to a funeral. The waitress, same one as before, poured me coffee and said, "Haven't seen you in a while." "Yeah," I said. "Had a trip to take care of." "Good trip." "Necessary." She smiled. "That's usually the best kind." Funny thing is, after that, life didn't suddenly become magical. Bills still came, work still sucked, traffic still existed. But everything felt lighter. Like I'd cleaned out a corner of my soul I didn't even know was cluttered. Mike asked me once, "You ever think about reaching out again? Just, as friends?" I said no. We already said everything that mattered. And that's true. Sometimes I still think about her. Not in a longing way. More like you think of an old song you used to love. You remember the words, the melody, but it doesn't hurt to hear it anymore. That's how I know I did the right thing. There's this saying, truth doesn't change the past, but it changes the way you see it. I think that's what I was chasing all along. Because standing on that patio, telling her the truth, it didn't rewrite what happened. It just made it make sense. And now, when people tell me their stories about the one that got away, I listen. And I tell them, if you got something left unsaid, say it. Even if it's years too late. Because silence is heavier than regret. So yeah, that's my story. I went to my ex's wedding. Not for her, not to win her back, not to cause a scene. Just to finally say what I should have said 2 years before. That I didn't leave because I stopped caring. I left because I cared too much to stay broken beside her. And that sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't to love someone again. It's to finally let them go with honesty. That's all. That's how I found peace at a wedding I shouldn't have gone to. And you know what? I'd do it again. Because the truth may come late, but always arrives on time.